Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my July wrap-up, so all the books that I read in July. I feel like I had a really fun reading month. I had some like 3, 2 stars, but I also had some 5 stars, some 4, 4.5. I also read a few fantasy books, which I haven't read in a few months. I feel like I haven't read much fantasy this year, so that was fun. I also listened to some audiobooks, and it was just an all-around great fun time reading this month. So I wanted to give all my thoughts on all the books that I read. So let's just hop on into it. No more rambling from me, at least at the beginning of this video, because I have a lot of books to talk about. So first is The Au Pair Affair by Tessa Bailey, which is the second book after Fangirl Down. And I read Fangirl Down a few months ago and really enjoyed it. It was very spicy, but I just had like a good time. It was a golf romance, had a blast. And I was very excited for this book because you see the characters in that book, and this is like single dad nanny trope, and I'm just gonna keep it brief. I gave it 2 stars. It was way too spicy for one, but also there was just some things that the characters did that I was like, I don't know, it was questionable, and like decisions that were made, I just did not enjoy it. Like by the end I was like so ready to be done. So I'm very disappointed because I was really hopeful for this book because I did love Fangirl Down, or I enjoyed Fangirl Down. I really loved It Happened One Summer and Hook, Line, and Sinker, but I do think her books have gotten spicier and the spice has taken over the plot, and for me, I don't really want to read that. So overall, disappointed in this book, but that's all I'll say about it because I don't like to talk about books I don't enjoy because it's just no fun. So next, let's move on to The Infernal Devices, which I am so excited that I read these this month, and I'm so excited to talk about them. So I did talk about these extensively in a recent vlog. This is the Infernal Devices series, which is in the Shadowhunters universe. And like I said, I talked about them extensively in a recent vlog, so I'm going to try to keep this brief. But this is a YA urban fantasy. I don't know if I said that in that video, but it's urban fantasy set in London in the like 1880s, 1878. So it's very like, there's like balls, and the way they talk is like very unique and fun. And so basically you're just following this girl Tessa, and she is from New York and she moves to London. She has grown up as a mundane, which is basically just a human, and she has been introduced into this world of the Shadowhunters, which are demon hunters, which sounds weird, but it's not weird. It's not like creepy or anything, and you're just kind of following her adventure and the other characters. There is romance in these books, but there's also just adventure, and you're just like following along these characters. They are so good. I loved them so much. Also, this is in the Shadowhunters world, like I said, and I am reading the Shadowhunters world in chronological order. So if you do that, you read the Infernal Devices first, and I skipped the epilogue of Clockwork Princess because it happens like a long time after this book ends, and so other books happen before the epilogue, if that makes any sense. Anyways, I gave Clockwork Angel 4 stars, Clockwork Prince 4.5 stars, and then Clockwork Princess I gave 5 stars. This book was so good. I mean, the whole series was so good, but this one was like so good. And I actually read the second one like in one day. I read it so fast, and the series just definitely gets better as you go, and I just really had such a good time with this series. If you were wanting to start reading fantasy, if you're wanting to start the Shadowhunters world, start with the Infernal Devices. They're so good, and I've heard such good things about them, and I finally read them, and I'm so happy that I did. And I am so excited to start The Last Hours because that is about the kids of these characters, and I just love these characters so much. Like, getting to see them again is just so fun. So I'm like a little bit into Chain of Gold, only like 50 pages maybe, but I'm excited to continue that series and hopefully read it in August. But so good, highly recommend. If you want more of my thoughts, you can watch my recent vlog. Next, I read Play Along by Liz Tomford. This is a new release that came out in July. And this is the 4th book in the Windy City series. The first one's Mile High, The Right Move, and then Caught Up. I love The Right Move and Caught Up so much. I do recommend reading these in order because I do feel like you get more like the found family, and the character connections are really good if you read them in order. But anyways, this is a baseball romance. They're all sports romances. It follows Isaiah, and he is the brother of the character from Caught Up, and he is like golden retriever, like a man obsessed with the female main character, who is one of the athletic trainers at this baseball team. And so he's like obsessed with her. Ever since he met her, he's been obsessed with her, and then they accidentally get married and you're just following them. It is so good. Like, if you want a book that's gonna have you giddy, kicking your feet, giggling, you need to read this book and this series. Liz Tomford knows how to write a romance so good. So I gave this 4.5 stars. I definitely could see myself upping the rating upon reread. I definitely want to reread all, or The Right Move, Caught Up, and then this, because I love the series so much. I love these characters. The found family is so good, and it's just so much fun. So there is a good bit of spice in these books, but there's still emotional depth and plot. And I also really loved seeing the journey of the female main character and the way that Isaiah was just obsessed with her. So sweet, so caring. It was so good, so good. There's also like deeper aspects of the story and like emotional depth and I just loved it so much. Next, I read Spring Fling, and I did not read the author of this book. And also in my notes, literally all I wrote is the chapters that the spice is in. I didn't write any thoughts, if that tells you anything about this book. So I did talk about it briefly in a vlog recently. Yeah, I talked about it in that same vlog, but this is an ARC. I got it on NetGalley and it comes out next spring. And it says it's for fans of Sarah Adams, and I love Sarah Adams, so I requested it and read it. I would say, like, if you like Sarah Adams, you should definitely try this out. I did give it 3 stars. It just wasn't like super like crazy. There wasn't anything about it that like stood out to me. I didn't really feel connected to the characters or the storyline, but I had a good time reading it. It's about this girl and this guy. They're like best friends, or they were best friends, and then they see each other again years later, and it's like a small town vibe. She works at this like, or she owns this like lure company, and he's moving back home to sell his family's home, and they obviously see each other again. It's also super short, super quick, and I do really recommend it. I think it was just a good time, and the spice is very minimal in this book. Like, the spice is basically like just a tiny paragraph, not super descriptive, very minimal spice, if that's what you're looking for. So I did enjoy it, and the cover is so cute. So, and then I read Last Time We Met by Emily Houghton, and this has been on my TBR since Christmas. My husband got it for me for Christmas, and I've been wanting to read it for literally years, and I finally picked it up, and I'm so happy I did. So this follows Eleanor and Finn, and it's that best friend situation. Like, they were best friends as kids, and then for 15 years they literally don't speak, and then they see each other again because Finn ends up going back to London, and they end up seeing each other because he lives in California, I think, and ends up coming back to London. And you're following the romance, but it's also so much more than romance. I feel like if you want a book that has romance but it also has so much emotional depth, it has other plot points besides the romance, and it has no spice, you should pick this book up. Sadly, it is not published in the US. I did order it from Blackwell's, or my husband did, but it's free shipping to the US from Blackwell's, and it's like $12, I think. So if you are interested in reading this book, you definitely should order it from Blackwell's because it'll get to you in a couple weeks, and it's such a good romance. Like, I highly recommend this. I feel like it's just a romance that I will recommend to people that, like, I did want more romance in this book, but I do think it did what it was meant to do. Like, it wasn't meant to be a romance. It was meant to be like kind of giving literary fiction. I also really loved the writing and how she wrote. I think it's because she's British or like English. The way that she wrote, it kind of comes off that way. The setting is obviously London, and I just really liked the vibes and the writing style of this book, so I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.25 stars. I also read it so fast. Like, the writing, I don't know, something about it. I was reading like 70 pages in an hour, which is a lot for just a like romance book. I don't know. I also feel like if you enjoyed The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary or anything by Sophie Cousins, you would really enjoy this book. Not that like this book is like those books, but just something about it. I think the like English vibe of this book reminded me of those. So if you like any of those books or that author, you would enjoy this book. So highly recommend. I wouldn't say there's like trigger warnings, but there are like emotional aspects to this book. And I don't think I cried, but like can get sad at times, but I still really enjoyed it. It's that perfect like romance, literary fiction, has emotional depth. Really good. Next, I read Off to the Races by Elsie Silver, which is the first book in the Gold Rush Ranch series by her, which is her first romance series, or her first series. They're all romances. Cowboy romance, and this is like, it's about this guy who owns this like ranch, and he ends up hiring this girl to come in and like help this horse like be able to ride. I don't know. I don't understand a lot of things, so I don't know how to explain it, but that's kind of the premise. Like, if you're a horse girl, if you like horses, you should read this. And so that's kind of the premise. They don't really get on the right foot, and then it's kind of going from there. But I had a really good time reading this. I read it so fast. I gave it 3.75 stars, but like a good 3.75. Like, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't feel connected to the characters, and I didn't feel super invested in the storyline, but I still really enjoyed it. Like, I had a great time, and I was honestly surprised that this is Elsie Silver's first book because it's really, really good. Like, I enjoyed it a lot, and I would say that there's less spice. I mean, there's still a good bit of spice, but there's less spice in her old series compared to her new books, if that matters to you. I feel like I just read it at the perfect time. Like, it was exactly what I needed, and I really enjoyed it. And then I read A Photo Finish by Elsie Silver, which is the next book in the series, and it follows Violet Eaton, who is the sister of the Eaton brothers that are in the Chestnut Springs series, which is so fun. So obviously this was written before Chestnut Springs. She talks about Chestnut Springs, she talks about her siblings, so it's really fun to see that. But this plot premise is very weird. I say almost you have to like suspend a bit of belief, especially like with what I like to read. This premise is a little weird. The male main character is the brother of the first book. The guy from the first book, his brother is this book, and he's very like closed off. I think he also was in the military of some sort, and so he has like PTSD and stuff like that. And I will say, like, this book is what she was trying to do with Hopeless, and it just didn't hit. Like, Hopeless I didn't like, and I feel like this is what she was trying to do with what she did with the photo finish. Like, she did the PTSD and the like slowly opening up between characters so well in this book. And like Hopeless, I don't know what happened there. I feel like it was so focused on the spice, and like the PTSD like military aspect didn't really work, but this really, really good. So I loved that. I gave it 4 stars. I did enjoy it more than the first book, and I had a great time. It was good. I feel like his slow way of opening up was so sweet, and he treats Violet so well, and I really, really enjoyed it. I feel like the slow burn was really good, and I had a great time reading it. I cannot wait to continue the series. There's 2 more books, and they're also being like traditionally published, so that's really fun. The covers are so cute. Like, I want to buy them just because the covers are so cute. I also loved just seeing Violet's story because I really wanted to know more about her, obviously, because I read Chestnut Springs, and also you see her in the first book. Really enjoyed it. Next, I read an arc of Is She Really Going Out With Him by Sophie Cousins. This book comes out in November, and I didn't love this book as much as I hoped I would, but I did give it 3.5 stars. I feel like I am trying to make 3 stars and like 3.5. It's still a good rating. It's still a good book. It just wasn't like, I wasn't obsessed with it. So basically this is like, this girl works at this company where she writes columns. So basically she is going through a divorce. So she has like a few kids, and she goes through a divorce, and like a year later the book starts, and she works for this column, and she ends up writing about dates, and her kids end up picking like dates for her and like that kind of thing. I don't like to say too much about a book, especially if it's not out yet, so I'm not gonna say too much about the plot, but basically like she is just ends up writing a column on these dates that she goes on. And I did have a really good time reading this. I loved seeing what she kind of learned post-divorce. I loved the writing. I love Sophie Cousins books, and there was also some really sweet moments in this book, especially towards the end, but there was just something like more that I wanted at the end. I don't know. Also just think Sophie Cousins books are so funny, so I did really enjoy it. I had a good time reading it, but it wasn't like as good as I was hoping, and it wasn't as good as like some other books by Sophie Cousins, but I still really enjoyed it. If you love Sophie Cousins books, you should still read it, and I do think it gives more rom-com vibes than like The Good Part. I feel like The Good Part has more emotion to it, while this is more like rom-com-y in a way. Also, she is like English or British, so it takes place in London, which is really fun too. So okay, next I read Heartless Hunter, and I also read the second book, Rebel Witch, so I'll just talk about both of these at once. So I got an email with the arc of the second book, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so excited, because I was waiting to read Heartless Hunter until the second book came out, and then I got an arc of the second book. What a slay. So anyways, I decided to pick up this and then immediately read the second one. So basically this one is about a witch and a witch hunter. Yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know. It's a witch and a witch hunter. It's like enemies to lovers, fantasy, romantasy, that kind of vibe. Anyways, and it does keep you so engaged. Like, I feel like I read these so fast. I was so engaged, very much enjoying my time reading them. And I feel like it's a very fun, fast-paced romantasy if that's what you're looking for. But I feel like I just need more with my fantasy books than just a romance plot. Like, I enjoyed this. I read it and I had a good time. I was really excited to read the second book. And then the second book kind of felt like a fever dream. Not a fever dream, but like whiplash almost. Like, it was just a lot going on. And I feel like every time the characters were together in both of the books, like I was just, like, it was good, but then I was just wanting more with the romance. I don't know. There was one scene in the first book that I loved so much, and I was kind of expecting more of that in the second book, which you do get, but it was just not as good as I was hoping. And I also feel like I just don't love witches in fantasy, which this is literally about a witch and a witch hunter. There was just some aspects that are like kind of giving me the creeps. Like, there's like evil witches, and I don't love that. Like, I've read a book that's like a cozy fantasy with witches, and they do like potions and stuff, but like when it gets to evil witches, don't love that. So didn't love these books. I gave them both 3 stars. That's what I settled on, but I still enjoyed reading them. I read them really quick, and I do feel like if you like romantasy, if you want a fast-paced fantasy with romance, I do recommend them. I just want more of a fantasy plot in my books, and I feel like when a romance or when a fantasy is too focused on the romance, like that's the point. When the romance is not going on, it's boring, because like it's a romantasy, so like you're focused on the romance, but then the plot is boring. That's how I felt about ACOTAR too, because I feel like it's so focused on the romance that the plot is so boring. So that's just how I feel, because I want more of a plot, but if you do want a fantasy for the romance, pick it up, because you'll probably like it. Anyways, I did have a good time reading both of these, and I would recommend them. If they sound good to you, you probably would enjoy them, and I think the second one comes out in February. Anyways, I'm super thankful for the arc of the second one, and yeah, so that's my thoughts on those. Next, I read Where Happiness Begins by N.S. Perkins. This comes out August 20th, I think. I don't know. But this was so good. 5 stars, incredible. I loved it so much. So this is well, first it's the 3rd book after Where Time Stands Still and Where We Belong. You don't have to read them in order, but I did enjoy those, so I would recommend reading them. But this is about, this girl is kind of an influencer. She works at a bar, or she's a bartender, but she also is an influencer, and she like does like social media stuff because she she had a kidney transplant, so she like talks on social media about her kidney transplant, and there's like a band that shows up at her work, and she's like, oh my goodness, she loves music, so she listens to this band, says they're great, and like posts them on her Instagram and stuff. And the producer of the band is like, hey, will you go on tour with us? Will you post them a lot? Because you posting about the band really helped them, like, you know, gain momentum. And she's like, I can't, like, I have to pay like health insurance. And so the producer's like, okay, let's get married. So you can have health insurance and you can also like benefit the band, you know? So it's definitely like fake marriage, but the guy is super like closed off. You can tell he's like very grumpy, but it's because there's things that's happened to him in the past, and it's so good. I loved it so much. Obviously there's forced proximity, roommates because they're married. And I just love, one thing I love in a book is a musician, a band, a producer, a tour, like when she goes on tour with them or they go on tour together. I love that. I eat it up. I don't know what it is. So if you have recs for anything like that, let me know. I also think this book, well, first, it is very emotional. I feel like Anna Perkins books are just emotional, and this had me sobbing, literally sobbing in my house on my couch. I could not keep it together. Like, it was so good though, like so good. One of my favorite books of the year, one of my favorite romances of all time. It was incredible. I feel like the like slow burn and the way that like Carter opens up and like the forced proximity, it's just so good. And I will say, I feel like this kind of reminds me of like Lease on Love by Fallon Ballard meets the Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. This book is not like those at all, but there's just aspects of both of those. I think the aspect of like Lease on Love with the like forced proximity roommate situation in that book, and then like the musician in the Happy Ever After playlist, like reminds me of this book. So if you like either of those books, you should read this one. And it was just so good, like so emotional, but the romance was so good. There was so many like moments that like I cannot and will not ever forget. Like, they were so good, especially from the main character, and like just moments between both of them and the way they loved each other. Oh my goodness, it was so good. Okay, I'm gonna shut up now because I'm talking so much about that book. Next, I listened to The Enemy by Sarah Adams, which is the second book after The Match, and it is being traditionally published. I think you can find it early. Well, by the time this video is out, it's probably already out. But this is a like enemies to lovers situation. So I have already read The Match and The Enemy like a few years ago, so I'm like rereading them on audio, which is just such a great time. So the first book, The Match, his sister is the second book. She is the female character in the second book. So she owns this donut shop, and the male main character is kind of her like rival, like enemy type situation from high school. And so she runs into him because her best friends are getting married. They're like the best man, maid of honor, that kind of thing. They don't get along because, or like they just like think they hate each other, and you're just following them. Which the crazy thing is, when I first read these books, I liked The Match more than The Enemy, but upon reread, listening to the audiobooks, The Enemy I love so much, and I feel like I loved it more than The Match the second time around, which is just crazy how your like reading taste can change, or like what you like in a book can change. I don't know, I just loved it so much. It was so sweet. I didn't want to stop listening. I literally listened to like 60% of it in one day. I was like cleaning and listened to so much of it. It was so good. And also the bonus epilogue, if you've read this before, you're gonna want to read it again for that bonus epilogue. It is so good. I was literally so excited. Well, I just loved the whole book. It was so good, but the end with the bonus epilogue, oh, was so good. So I loved it more the second time. Like, I think I gave it like a 4.25 when I first read it, and I bumped it up to 5 stars upon reread because it was so good, and I loved listening to it, and I just love Sarah Adams books. They're so good. Next, I listened to But He's My Grumpy Neighbor by Anna Conwell. I read this earlier this year, and I really enjoyed it. I've been thinking about it a lot recently because I just really enjoyed it, and the audiobook was on NetGalley, so I listened to it. I think it's coming out this month in August, like in a few days. I don't know. The audiobook is. Anyways, this is like a obviously grumpy neighbor situation. Like, she lives in this like kind of a small, I think it's Peach Hollow. It's like this little small town outside of Atlanta, and Adrian ends up being her neighbor, and he's kind of grumpy, but like not super grumpy, not rude. He's just like closed off. He doesn't really want to let anyone in, and you're just like following them, and it's just so sweet and so cute and so wholesome. Also really love the narrators of this book because I feel like they just fit the characters so well, and I just had a great time listening to it. I also listened to it really fast because it was just really good. I love these characters, I love this book, and it was so fun to listen to it and like live it again or read it again. Also, it has no spice, and it's just wholesome, great time. I would recommend the physical, I would recommend the audiobook. It was great. And then lastly, I reread Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage, and I'm going to not speak about it because we all know, like, we're sick of it. It was everything. I have no words for this book. Perfect, 5 stars, infinity stars. It comes out in November. And that's all I'm gonna say, because you're like, Bethany, we get it. We get it. So I reread that because I was like kind of in a slump, didn't know what to read, and I just love that book so much. I was savoring every bit of it because it was like, I read it so fast the first time. Like, this time I was like just savoring it, and it was incredible. So that was the last book I read. I reread it. I did read it in June, and I reread it in July. What about it? What about it? Okay. Anyways, that's all the books that I read in July. I have been talking for so long, but I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing what I read in July, and I'm very excited to see what I read in August. I am very excited for the rest of summer and then getting into fall. It's just gonna be really fun. So also let me know what you read in July, books you want to read in August. So I think that's it, and I will see you very soon for my next video. Bye.